this is in fact OJ coming down the freeway.
Apparently, the reports we get, they're about 40 minutes
Absolutely.
from downtown Los Angeles,
you know, this thing has been going on now since Monday, and especially with the craziness of today's events, everybody wants to know what's going on. I'm sure many can't believe that this has happened, especially that he has run from the scene and didn't come to be arraigned, and everybody's just so confused about what's going on. So now maybe this will all come to light once they do get the suspect vehicle stopped, and be able to figure out exactly what's going on and why these events have occurred in the order that they have all day long.
Their fear would be, of course, if they pull up close, and obviously Mr. Simpson has been under sedation. He is a fugitive. They're reporting seeing a gun. If they pull too, there's another vehicle just pulling off to the side, and more cars as the car continues to pass regular cars on the freeway. The fear is that if you pull up too close and you have someone who is in this kind of raw emotional condition, he could shoot himself. There's someone else driving the car. There could be someone else in the back of the car. We don't know that. The helicopter can't go closer than it is now. It's going to pass through another overpass. You see cars in the other lane heading south. Look at all those cars stopped on freeways above it, overpasses.
And
everyone knows the story. All these people are tuned to radios.
Pat, you know, whether they're hearing it on the radio, catching it on the TV, and then just making a quick exit out of their houses to get to these locations just to see if they can get a glimpse.
The California Highway Patrol has now confirmed to CNN that it is definitely Al Cowling's vehicle. And they are almost certain that OJ is in the passenger seat.
Pat, we're just now crossing the 605.
California Highway Patrol is also telling
so
CNN,
we're starting to get up into the Long Beach area, or actually northeast Long Beach.
But again, OJ appears to be holding a gun to his head.
Well, David, the 405 is not too much farther down than 91.
Apparently in his cellular phone that he wants to go to his mother's house.
Will be the Long Beach or the
that
710 freeway.
Go to his mother's
then after that would be the 110 freeway.
We're getting.
And then after that, you'd hit the 405. So, I mean, at this point, we really have no idea which or where the final destination may be for purported O.J. Simpson inside this white Bronco.
You are listening to KCL's coverage. There's an anchor in the studio and a man in the helicopter, a reporter. That has been identified as Al Cowling's car, O.J. Simpson in the passenger seat, apparently with a gun, with a report coming. Apparently they're picking this up through some sort of phone that he wants to go to his mother's house. Of course, we're here in Washington, so we don't know where his mother's house is. The California Highway Patrol is telling CNN that O.J. Simpson, through his cellular phone, is reportedly wanting to go to his mother's house, and if that's true, the police are letting him, because they are not pulling up alongside this car. As you see, all the California Highway Patrol cars trailing it. The cars on the other side heading south are stopping to look over. All of these people listening to their radios, other cars driving off the highway, and as they pass overpasses, people are stopped to look down.
I've got, right now, it's passing one vehicle on the right. There's some cars on the freeway. Maybe everybody doesn't know what's going on yet at this point. Absolutely. But up ahead, and I'm just going to kind of let Jeff take the camera and pan around, then we'll come back to the suspect vehicle. But now you can get an idea. Right. I've just kind of had to put the helicopter in a crab here. Okay. Now you can kind of see of what's going on. Now you've got traffic in the southbound or the eastbound lanes is fairly heavy, but in the westbound lanes, which are the direction that this vehicle is moving, are all it's fairly light. People have pulled off to the side, so. At this point, you know, again, it is a pursuit, and that's, I'm sure, the way that the CHP is dealing with this situation. The main thing, again, is we'll say, and I'm sure I'll say it a couple more times before we're finished here, is that they want to try to keep it as peaceful and safe as possible, and without any intimidation, or as little as intimidation as possible with the vehicle. Very close to that, Pat. You know, just traveling along the roads, I'm not exactly sure which ones we're coming up. It appears right now we're coming up on Lakewood Boulevard at the 91.
They're on I-91 now, by the way. That's heading west, and then they'll cut into 101 and the 405 freeway.
Artesia.
The 405 is the one, the Artesia freeway, and then the 405 is the one that goes by LAX. That would head them toward the city as well. All those cars are stopping to get a view. They know what's going on by listening to their radios.
We're just going to have to wait and see at this point and see exactly
now, there's
what is going to
nothing,
go on and take place.
KCAL is reporting, there's nothing you can really do here but keep this helicopter right on top of the scene.
Rather unusual way to end this situation.
Stay with it. They have identified this is Al Cowling's car, O.J. Simpson in the passenger seat. We have not received an affirmative that Cowlings is driving it, although that's a fairly good assumption. He's not at his house, and he is one of O.J.'s oldest friends and a former teammate. As the traffic proceeds, what you see there is normal traffic, that pickup truck and a car, but very little traffic as all these cars attuned to their radios are pulling off. The cars on the top of the screen heading east on that freeway are just slowing down to look and get a glimpse of one of the icons of American sports history, O.J. Simpson, on this tragic June day. In a city besieged with stories, when you think what can top one with another, another occurs. Again,
45 minutes at the most.
I don't know.
I'm trying to keep it as slow as possible and as low as possible in torque.
The car, of course, is not going very fast.
Please keep it on.
The police are just trailing it. There are a bunch of police cars
Kyle,
trailing it.
I might have about 45 minutes at the absolute most left, so we're just going to keep going as long as it can.
I know. I know. This is Larry King as we stay atop this scene. Jim Hill, famed sportscaster in Los Angeles, an old friend, a former athlete, old friend of O.J. Simpson, is going on radio in Los Angeles.
Still going westbound 91, just approaching the 710 freeway.
To turn himself in.
According to the lanes,
Jim Hill is going on radio in Los Angeles, appealing to O.J. Simpson to please turn himself in. He is on 91 West.
At the 91 westbound, very slow, David. Right now, I'm indicating 55 miles an hour airspeed. It could be a little bit slower down on the ground.
There's the traffic. That traffic is going east on 91. 91, if it stays, goes right out toward the water. And those are all those vehicles, the police vehicles, following this car. We have Jim Hill, an old friend of O.J.'s, former athlete and sportscaster, on the radio, hoping that O.J. is listening to the radio and begging him to turn himself in. Okay. O.J.'s mother lives in San Francisco, where he grew up. There is a belief, though, that she flew to L.A. today.
We are acting.
Let's listen to this officer.
Assistance capacity at this time.
What about the report that officers, whether they be Orange County Sheriff's deputies involved or your officers from the CHP, have seen O.J. Simpson with a gun to his head in that vehicle?
Yes, I don't have any specific reports on that, the information that I have. So I can't comment on that.
But if there is perhaps a weapon or fear that there might be a weapon inside, safety has to come into play here when you're considering trying to stop a vehicle, correct?
Yes, we have, the CHP has policies for high risk and or felony stops, and the officers, if they are involved in that, will act according to policy, and they're well trained, and we go over these scenarios all the time in training. So the officers are well aware of the procedure to use in felony stops or high-risk situations.
At what speed are they going now, Officer Ferrier? Any idea?
I don't have that information right now.
Apparently,
it's not a high-speed pursuit. The location is, it looks like it's westbound SR 91 at perhaps Atlantic, I believe.
Okay, we're just told now, officer, that it's west of the 605, westbound on the 91 freeway.
I see. Okay.
This is really a case, as it has been in so many of these pursuits on Southern California freeways, perhaps waiting for the driver to run out of gas, or for, in this case, if what we've heard about O.J. Simpson with the gun, perhaps to just change his mind and pull over and end it all. I don't mean end it all in terms of O.J. Simpson. I mean end this pursuit. You're just going to wait them out, in other words.
Yes, like I say, our policy is generally to follow the pursuit and hoping that, in this case, that the suspect vehicle will run out of gas and stop. Fortunately, it's not a high-speed pursuit. They're going at a relatively moderate speed, which is better than a high-speed pursuit, obviously. And if it were turned into a high-speed pursuit, CHP officers at the time would choose to either abandon the pursuit or remain in the pursuit, depending on factors that would involve safety or potential hazardous situations.
Christine, I've just noticed an extraordinary thing, and that is that there are cars. Look at those people right there waving as this Bronco goes by. They're waving at O.J. Simpson. Everybody in Southern California who has a radio or a television is certainly aware of what's going on right now. And this is a Bronco. We believe O.J. Simpson is in it, along with his longtime friend Al Cowlings, a former teammate at SC. They are westbound on the 91, and people who, of course, have been pulled over by the CHP to give this vehicle clear passage on the freeway are standing there and waving.
We are watching KTTV's coverage, that's Fox 11 in Los Angeles, of this ongoing drama of Al Cowlings' car with O.J. Simpson in it, driving west on the 91 freeway. That would put them right around, if you know L.A., Bellflower Boulevard now. This is called the Artesia Freeway, and they're heading toward Compton.
It's been an extraordinary day.
Jim Hill, O.J.'s friend and sportscaster, has been on the radio. The last thing Jim said was, O.J., you were a man, you are a man, be a man, turn yourself in. Those are overpasses with crowds. Prove to the world you're still a man, turn yourself in. We have pretty much verified that O.J. is in the passenger seat in that car. We have received a report that his mother flew in from San Francisco to Los Angeles this morning, but we don't know where she is in Los Angeles.
It would seem almost funny that perhaps Simpson would...
This is definitely the Al Cowling vehicle, and O.J. is in the car. The California Highway Patrol's Pete Gustafson tells CNN that O.J. appears to be holding a gun to his head. Those
either Al Cowlings or
CHP are trailing that car. The car is not exceeding the speed limit.
To his head and wanted to be taken to his mother. If you have just joined us now, just to recap very briefly, as we watch this Ford Bronco continue westbound.
Earlier today, Robert Shapiro had arranged for O.J. to turn himself in. Doctors were in attendance. They were all going to go together in a car because they were worried about suicide. When they went downstairs from a conference room in O.J.'s house, he was gone. Shapiro did not hear again from him. We then had a press conference later in which Shapiro announced that O.J. had written seal letters to his mother, to his children, had codified the will. That means might have changed an add or two and had the will certified, and then wrote a letter to the public in which O.J. said such things as, I have nothing to do with Nicole's murder. I loved her. Recently, we'd come to an understanding. For now, we're not right for each other. It was tough splitting. But then it goes on in a rambling account saying goodbye to people and saying he was pretty much at the end. It certainly reads like a suicide note.
11:45 was the next time he was supposed to do it. He didn't do it. And then the all points bulletin went out. O.J. Simpson has been missing now for about 7.5 hours as this relatively low-speed pursuit goes on. You heard the CHP officer.
Vince Evans, quarterback with the L.A. Raiders, the ageless Vince Evans, is now crying. He is on the radio pleading with his friend O.J. to please give himself up.
And certainly an indication of the...
Vince Evans, the well-traveled quarterback in the National Football League, is now on the radio begging O.J. to give himself up as the car with O.J. in it passes some other passenger cars on California Interstate 91. That's the Artesia Freeway.
I hope it isn't so. I hope O.J. is not connected.
That will, coming toward the 710 freeway is where the next big freeway they'd connect with. If they stay on 91, they're heading toward the ocean going that way. On a direct line toward Manhattan Beach, they are south of L.A. and south of downtown. This car is heading due west.
To television broadcasting. It's hard to believe that something like this could happen where he is now running for his life here. He is a fugitive on the run. Authorities following him they believe he is in this vehicle right now on the West 91 near the 110 freeway. And it's interesting to note the time. This started apparently around 6:45, a little bit after the main part of rush hour. Authorities, though, are attempting to clear the freeway, although you can see a car right there going up right next to the Bronco. Not an easy job clearing the freeway. OJ Simpson formally charged today with 2 counts of murder. He was supposed to surrender at 11 o'clock today. Basically, his attorney turned his back, and OJ managed to get away. Get away,
apparently, with his good friend Al Cowlings. Now, we have a little bit of an update. This is off the Associated Press wire, or excuse me, the Reuters wire. According to someone who is monitoring police scanners, the man in the car says he would not give himself up. He's in the back of the vehicle. He has a gun to his head, and he says he will hurt himself. He is demanding to be taken to his mother. Now, that apparently is information off a police scanner, according to the Reuters newswire. We continue to watch from Sky 11 this 1993 Ford Bronco. We do know that this is the vehicle that belongs to Al Cowlings, former pro football player himself, a longtime friend of O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson, when he was preparing to surrender this morning to be picked up by LAPD and taken to Parker Center, wrote 3 notes, one to his mother, one to his family, and one that his attorney and a friend of his, a friend read this afternoon at the attorney's office in Century City. And to listen to that note, it sounded very much like a farewell goodbye from O.J. Simpson. Said that he basically thought he had done what was right all his life and wanted to be remembered for that. He asked the media to leave his kids alone and for all of us to remember him for what he had been.
He also proclaimed his innocence in that note. He said, quote, "First, everyone understand I had nothing to do with Nicole's murder." Went on to say, if we had a problem, it's because I loved her so much. Don't feel sorry for me. Thanks for making my life special. I hope I helped yours. Peace and love, OJ. His attorney had said that he'd been extremely depressed. He was under the care of doctors. One friend is quoted as saying he had never seen O.J. Simpson so low.
The vehicle, we believe, with Al Cowlings and O.J. Simpson in it, and it looks like the emergency flashers are going on that Bronco. That's the first time we've had sort of this view of the vehicle. And it is going westbound again. It appears the way the sun is hitting the front of the vehicle, although it's a little bit difficult to tell because they have made a transition from one freeway to another. And there you see just a huge number of police cars, CHP, Orange County Sheriff, LAPD, presumably Los Angeles County Police Department as well as LA County Sheriff's cars, all a respectful distance behind, just waiting, hopefully, for this to play itself out peacefully without any further loss of life or any more damage and destruction. On the phone now we have psychiatrist Dr. Tom Linden. And Dr. Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Chris.
At this point, we have reports that O.J. Simpson is in this vehicle. One report says he has a gun pointed to his head, says he will not be taken alive, and wants to be taken to see his mother. At this point, what would you deduce psychiatrically from those comments?
Well, I can't obviously get inside O.J. Simpson's mind right now, but judging from other experiences with suicidal people, number one, he has to be taken very, very seriously. Number two, quite often people who are suicidal at that time are also potentially homicidal. And that's something that the police are very well aware of. And anyone who would be negotiating with O.J. Simpson would have to be aware of that as well. So he's not only a risk to himself at this moment, he is a risk to other people as well.
We have heard, you know, in movies and on television and so on for years that when a potentially suicidal person calls someone, either on the phone or says it face-to-face, that he or she is considering suicide, that in by itself is a call for help. Would you consider these 911 calls, talking about what O.J. is thinking of doing, to be a call for help as opposed to a serious suicidal person?
Well, I don't see the difference. Somebody who's seriously suicidal often is calling for help at the same time. It's clear to me that he's desperate for help right now, but a person in a suicidal situation is in a very, between a rock and a hard place. One part of himself may be wanting to kill himself, the other part very much may want to live. And so it's the job of negotiators. I'm sure there's probably a police psychiatrist who may be patched through to him. It's their job to try to appeal to that part of O.J. that wants to live, to surrender himself as peacefully as possible.
Obviously, the thinking then is not rational whatsoever. He is apparently with one of his best friends, but still, in the state of mind that we can guess that he might be in, he can't be thinking too rationally. Is that correct?
Well, people who are acutely suicidal do not act rationally. So the point in the idea in dealing with acutely suicidal people is to get them in safe hands so that they don't do anything that obviously could not be undone. If you make an attempt on your life, you're not in a clear, sane mind at the time, and certainly.
If I'm reading it right, this is Larry King at CNN in Washington. We're picking up reports from KCAL and other affiliates in Los Angeles. My guess is they're on 710 North now. They veered off 91 onto 710 North, if I am correct. Look, I'm looking at a map here of Los Angeles, and I'm guessing they're somewhere around Paramount heading toward what would be Downey. They have the flashers on. That's been identified as Al Cowling's car. And O.J. Simpson, now we had said passenger side, apparently is in the back of that car. It's a 1993 Ford Bronco, very popular automobile. Okay, now we understand we have a psychiatrist with us at our studios in Atlanta, Dr. Alfred Nesser. Are you there, Dr. Nesser?
I'm here.
Okay.
Nesser, M-E-S-S-E-R.
All right, thank you, doctor. Based on what that psychiatrist just told the Fox station, would you agree with him?
Oh, yes, I think Tom Linden has it just right. What he's describing, I think, is what we call a dissociated state, where people act in one way, or a part of them acts in one way, and they behave in another and think in another. The end result of that, or the end station of that, is multiple personality disorder. And here we have a more acute phase of that, a dissociated state.
What part, doctor, does the fellow driving the car, his old friend, play in this now?
Well, he's the key, I think in many ways the key, and I think his friend Vince is the key. What O.J. has to know is that he's not being abandoned. He's not all alone. He's very angry at all that's happened to him, but he has to know that he's not being abandoned. In my book, I think a lot of this began with the difficulty with his ex-wife and her feeling that the two of them could not make it together. Larry, do you remember the situation in Annapolis before the Army-Navy game when the two Navy officers who were engaged split up because the woman wanted no longer to maintain the engagement?
That's right, one went and
she said to him, it's ended, and he went off in a huff. She called a good friend, another naval officer, to come over and sit with her and comfort her. And then the first man came back and suddenly saw these two together. And he shot the two of them, and then he shot himself.
I'm going to cut into you, and let's go back to KTTV for more reports right from the scene.
I used to watch O.J. play football at USC when he was in college. I've got long memories about O.J., as do a lot of people, and I think a lot of people want to see this end peacefully, but I think they should keep in mind that joining in the spectacle at this point will not help.
We should add at this point, Dr. Tom Linden, that the car is now northbound on the 405, coming north from the 91, so headed back up toward the Santa Monica area, actually a long way from Santa Monica, but in that part of the world, coming north on the 405 freeway, on the San Diego freeway. And I'm struck, Dr. Linden, in regard to what you just said about having watched O.J. Simpson play for SC and for the Buffalo Bills and so on, and certainly all the myriad of commercials. Something that Gil Garcetti said today at his news conference, the district attorney, who said, we have seen the falling of an American hero. And I, Gil Garcetti, have shared that same view. And that's a view that we, particularly if you are an SC fan, of course, but I think just a sports fan and an American fan, here's a man whose last name never needs to be mentioned. It's always OJ, and everyone knows who you're talking about.
Well, you know, in such a chaotic and sometimes crazy world, everybody needs heroes, and there are, I'm sure, millions of Americans have looked to OJ as a hero, and when a hero is in trouble, it's very, very hard to accept, and I think that's probably the feeling of a lot of people. It's certainly my feeling.
Dr. Linden, let us give our viewers some more information. We understand the vehicle is traveling northbound on the 405 near the LAX area, south of LAX. Traveling northbound, interesting to note, that would be toward the Brentwood area. That is where O.J. Simpson lives. That is near the location where the murders took place. Again, the vehicle has moved now from the 91 freeway to the 405. Before that, it was on the I-5 freeway. So they've covered quite a bit of distance here.
Christine, in that last close-up we had, it appeared that, although we had the one report that O.J. Simpson was in the back seat of that Ford Bronco, it looked as if in the last close-up we had of the passenger side that there was a person in the front passenger seat. Obviously somebody's driving it, but a person in the right front seat as well.
Right, you can see perhaps it looks like maybe a shoulder there or the seat there in that close-up shot of the Bronco. We should point out there are a convoy of officers that have been following this vehicle since it hit the freeways at about 6:45. That's when they spotted the vehicle. Among the people traveling in these vehicles is a top law enforcement hostage negotiator, part of the convoy trailing this Bronco. There are reports the authorities were trying to phone the Bronco, but they were getting no response. We do know there is a car phone in that vehicle because some calls had been made, and that is one way authorities were able to locate the vehicle, and they have confirmed this is the vehicle belonging to O.J. Simpson's former teammate, Al Callings.
And indeed, the cellular phone call at about 6:30 was what did trigger it. Because of technology, they knew that, number one, they knew that this was a vehicle that O.J. Simpson possibly was in, because it does belong to Al Callings, and he and Al Callings disappeared from another Simpson friend's home in the San Fernando Valley this morning. The attorney and a psychiatrist that had been dealing with O.J. Simpson since Monday, and some police officers were on one part of this friend's home, and they went to tell O.J. that the police were here to put him in handcuffs and take him to Parker Center, and they discovered that O.J. Simpson and Al Callings were gone. And that was now about 8 hours ago. As we continue to watch this Ford Bronco going north on the 405, and it was a phone call because they knew the cellular phone that went with that vehicle, a phone call at about 6:30 that triggered the search. It began in Orange County, a phone call made on the cellular phone from Al Callings' Bronco. Since then, there's been at least one call to 911 in which the person on the phone said that O.J. Simpson had a gun to his head and wanted to be taken to see his mother. Now, it's quite possible, since the car is going north on the 405 headed toward the LAX area, north of that, of course, is Brentwood, that perhaps O.J. Simpson's mother is at...
It ain't gonna happen.
We're back at CNN in Washington. We hear somebody yelling, "It ain't gonna happen." I don't know whose voice that is. Obviously, the helicopter's veered off a little now and is trying to catch back up to O.J. Simpson, heading past LAX on the 405 freeway north. His former famed coach, John McKay, one of the legendary coaches, has gotten on public radio to tell O.J. that he loves him, to beg him to please give himself up. Again, you see traffic in the south lane stopping and looking, police cars trailing, other traffic stopping off to the right, getting toward 8 o'clock in Los Angeles, about 25 minutes away from 8 o'clock. If they stayed right where they're going now, they're going to go right toward the Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Brentwood areas where O.J. lives and where the two people killed also lived. There's the Ford Bronco. O.J. reported in the back. There apparently appears to be something in the front as well. There's something appears sticking out of the right-hand side of that car. And again, they're losing the picture a little, is KTLA. Other reports we're getting is that O.J. appears to be a little incoherent, and they've picked him up a little on the phone, and the voice sounds slurred. There you see LAX. In fact, you see a plane landing at LAX. And I don't know what that is. That must be, that's part of the chopper. As the LA airport, one of the busiest in the world. The 405 freeway is the freeway closest to the airport, runs north and south, called the San Diego Freeway. And the helicopter, obviously the reason the helicopter has gotten out of pattern here is there are commercial flights coming in and out of that airport. And you can't apparently, because if you're landing in L.A., as those people do, they always land from the east. They will go right over the 405, so they've obviously steered this helicopter to be out of position of not hitting a passenger plane. There you see the tip of the helicopter outside the cameras. Again, the car continues to travel, trailed by California Highway Patrol. We understand that Dr. Michael Baden can hear us. How are you, Michael?
Hi, Larry. Sorry to be talking to you at this time.
Yeah, Michael is an old friend. He's the famed forensic pathologist for New York City for many, many years, one of the foremost people in his field. I know you're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, Michael, but you were with O.J. today. Can you tell us what happened this morning?
Yeah, I and Dr. Henry Lee, who's a criminalist type expert, and a psychiatrist, Saul Fairstein, and another doctor, an internist, were examined in the process of examining O.J. and had just finished examining O.J. and waiting for the police to arrive when he disappeared. And
what had he said to you, Michael?
Scientific studies.
What had he said to you?
Well, he was very cooperative. He was very, he indicated that he was very upset that he caused us upset by having to come there. He was depressed. He was obviously depressed. We were concerned, and arrangements had been made that he should be observed by a psychiatrist when he got into the correction department and when he was put into the prison cell.
Michael, and you were called out as an expert on the cause of death and type of death and how the deaths would have occurred, right?
Yeah, I'm involved with Dr. Lee in trying to evaluate the scientific evidence, the autopsy findings, what type of weapon was used, what kind of trace evidence, hairs, fibers, blood stains. For the defense, right? Well, he hadn't been arrested yet. In order to make sure that nothing was overlooked, because O.J. Simpson wanted to find out who really killed his wife. And whatever that is, his lawyer, he hadn't been arrested yet, had wanted to make sure that nothing was overlooked. Mm-hmm. And we were there to collect evidence to go over what had been done. As he says in his own letter, and as he said to you, he never admitted killing, right? Well, certainly not to me. He seemed to be bewildered, Larry, as to why people were so felt he had killed his family when he was bereaved and very upset at what had happened. Do you think, and he couldn't quite understand why suspicion was pointing to him. The L.A. police would have allowed you to cooperate with them? Well, Bob Shapiro was in the process of doing that, yes. Both Henry and I have worked for the L.A. police in the past and with Gil Garcetti in the district attorney's office. And what we were doing, he hadn't been charged with anything. Once he was charged, then we can get more information. They wouldn't have exhumed the bodies, though, right? You would have looked at their reports. First, we looked at their reports, because the families have an absolute right to object to an exhumation, and we wouldn't want to put them through that process unless it was absolutely necessary. All right, Michael, based on your understanding of all these things and talking with the other psychologists and psychiatrists, could we, in fact, have O.J. being totally in an unreal world here and not accepting the fact that he may have done what he did? Sure. He was so depressed and he's so upset that we were concerned that he could hurt himself. And right now, this is a horrible thing we're watching, which the chances of this winding up, badly are great.
Why?
Because he was distraught when he left. He's not leaving to escape to Mexico or escape to any place. Our concern when he was not found wasn't that he was trying to escape, was that he was going to harm himself. And then after that, that letter was found, which supports the view that he is potentially very suicidal.
In that little box, we see O.J. Simpson's home in Brentwood. That car is heading toward Brentwood. Where are you, Michael?
I'm right now in Beverly Hills at a hotel.
Are you watching this with me?
Pardon me?
Are you watching this with me?
Yes, I am watching with you. I just came back about 20 minutes ago from the San Fernando Valley home where O.J. had been for the past 2 days.
What do you imagine the driver's doing here?
Well, AC, I'm not sure what I felt confident that when I saw his depression that Al Cowley, who was with him, was able to make sure enough that he didn't hurt himself.
Let me cut in a second, Michael. Let's go to KTLA and their coverage from the sky.
Desires of O.J. to return to Brentwood have been well publicized, so I guess there is contact between the units in pursuit and the Ford Bronco itself. It does appear that way, and especially they seem to have cleared the freeway pretty much like they do when you see a presidential motorcade. You'll notice that everyone is off to the sides and the freeway is wide open. Does it appear that way to you from your viewpoint, Craig?
Oh, most definitely. As you can see, just crossed over a section of lots of pedestrians on the freeway. The on-ramp at around Venice is just jam-packed with people, spectators looking out of their vehicles, looking on at the procession here, northbound 405.
Okay, Craig, Stan and I were just speculating about what the Highway Patrol and LAPD will do when they arrive at the Sunset Boulevard off-ramp. Now, it's possible that that car may turn off at another point, and the access to his estate could be reached, of course, from Wilshire, or there is another turnoff, as I recall, near Waterford, which would then let him go under the freeway to Church Lane and then up to Sunset Boulevard. So I think that what we want to see, if you could accommodate us and our viewers, would be that when he gets to Sunset Boulevard, to see what happens next if the car gets that far.
Yes, it'll be quite interesting to see what is going to develop here in the next 5 minutes or so. Currently approaching the 405-10 interchange northbound.
So you're right near the Santa Monica Freeway, and it looks as though the car is proceeding at, what would you estimate, 40, 45 miles an hour?
Yeah, approximately that speed is between 35 and 45 miles an hour, I would estimate.
Uh-huh. Okay, then from the I-10 interchange up to Sunset Boulevard is only going to be maybe 3 or 4 minutes more.
Oh, most definitely. We're just coming up on the interchange at this time into the West LA area, and if indeed someone is in communication with the vehicle, and that is a distinct possibility of getting off at Sunset en route to the Brentwood location, and possibly that could be a termination point.
It does look like he's going past the 10 turnoff, doesn't it?
Yes, currently at the interchange at this time, and he's continuing northbound on the 405.
Okay, now, if I'm just making a guess here, he's either going to turn off at Waterford or at Sunset Boulevard. It's possible to go to the next turnoff and then double back to get to Sunset. But
yeah, he's right in front of me.
But Craig, do you see any blockades on those off-ramps up ahead?
Unfortunately, I don't see anything like that. It looks pretty smooth sailing up the 405. I don't believe there is any roadblocks up ahead.
Okay, I didn't mean across the freeway. I meant on the off-ramps. Of course, that may be a little bit out of your sight. It'll probably come into your view within the next 60 seconds or so.
Yes, the off-ramps are quite blocked. It appears that a good number of people are pulled on the right shoulder and are out of their vehicles watching this procession proceed up the 405 freeway here. It's in this area, it's becoming more prevalent that people are stopped alongside the road and are watching this as it passes them by.
What off-ramp are you coming up on now? You should be approaching pretty close to Wilshire Boulevard, aren't you?
Coming up on Santa Monica Boulevard at this time.
Right.
And that off-ramp is not blocked. Mm-hmm. And the vehicle is still in the far left lane, continuing northbound.
Let's mention to our viewers that there are only 3 off-ramps now remaining if he's going to go to that Brentwood estate. There's the one coming up on Wilshire, which are probably approaching now.
That's affirmative, Hal.
Okay, and then right after that, probably another 30 to 40 seconds, you'll be at Waterford. We'll see if he turns off on Waterford, but he's in the left lane.
Yes, left lane, currently left lane. You can see other traffic there with the vehicle. The left lane and the other traffic are pulling off to the right shoulder at this time, ahead of the vehicle.
Okay, now it's crucial to see if he starts moving over to the right lane.
It doesn't appear that will be the case due to the number of vehicles blocking the right lanes.
Craig, Eric Spillman is right there at the intersection of Sunset and the 405. Eric, can you read us? Go ahead and tell us what you see.
Well, first of all, we're just coming up. We're going north on the 405. We're coming to Sunset Boulevard right now. And I can tell you that I've seen CHP officers stopping people from getting onto the 405. The southbound 405, as you know, is a parking lot with everybody stopped and out of the cars looking, waiting for this chase to come. But the Sunset Boulevard off-ramp is open, and it appears that they think that he might get off here. The whole way going north along the 405, it is an amazing sight. Along the right-hand shoulder, people have pulled over, many of them carrying signs such as signs reading things like "Save the Juice," "Go OJ." People are literally cheering him on as he travels northbound on the 405, and we can only assume that he plans to get off at Sunset and go towards perhaps his home.
All right, now, Eric, do you hear us?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, we have been speculating that he would get off on Sunset. He must be approaching you right now. He is still in the far left lane. We'll let you know if he starts moving over into the right lane. Now, remember, there's an exit on that freeway right past Sunset Boulevard. I believe it's Moraga Drive.
There is. When you come to the Sunset Boulevard overpass over the 405, it is crowded with people who are outside on the bridge.
He's moving over now, Eric. He's moving over to the right, which means he may take that Sunset Boulevard off-ramp. He's now moving over to the right lane.
Go, follow.
Craig, are we approaching Sunset Boulevard now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, we're approaching Sunset Boulevard.
There's a crowd of people who are on the bridge here watching as he approaches the Sunset Boulevard.
All right, Eric.
Looks like there's a...
Eric, it appears now as though he is getting... As I recall, there are 2 lanes on the Sunset Boulevard off-ramp. He is in one of them, and that's the lane he would be using. Looks like he's getting off there.
Okay, Hal, it looks like he is getting off at the off-ramp at Sunset.
All right. Okay.
Getting off. He's on the off-ramp now, coming up the off-ramp at Sunset. Lots of people at the overpass at Sunset, and possibly here will be a westbound turn en route to Brentwood.
That's right.
Looks like he's in the left lane now.
Yeah.
Making a left turn. The intersection is free, and he's clear, and now making his left turn westbound on Sunset.
All right. He must have gone right by you, Eric.
Well, he has, and we're staying ahead of it. We're going to his mansion, believing that he's going there, but it was an amazing situation on that overpass there. There were people running around on top of there. I don't know how he's going to be able to drive through all those people. All along Sunset Boulevard, there are people stopped as well ahead of the chase. We can only assume he's going to his home on Rockingham in Brentwood.
Okay, Eric, that's exactly what had happened. He did take that Sunset Boulevard off-ramp, as we had speculated, and now he is proceeding west on Sunset Boulevard. He just went past Woodburn and will be approaching Barrington Avenue.
And there's a red light at Barrington. There are lights on this. I don't know what he's going to do, how he's going to respond to traffic lights. He hasn't had to cope with that, but there's quite a lot of traffic lights. We're hearing the sirens behind us now. He is right behind us. We're hearing the sirens. The police have their sirens on. Both sides of the street have pedestrians.
All right,
They've just passed us at Barrington.
He just went past Barrington.
Just passed us at Barrington, followed by the sheriffs. They're Orange County Sheriff, Santa Ana police officers who are in pursuit.
Okay, Eric, it's only now probably 3 minutes at the most, I would say, to his home in Brentwood.
That's right. His home west of the 405 on a street called Rockingham.
Right.
He will have to make a right turn onto Rockingham, and that is where his mansion is. It looks like there's at least 10, well, maybe not 10, but 7 or 8 Santa Ana Police, Orange County sheriffs, and highway patrol officers following him, as well as regular private citizens on motorcycles who are following this chase now. And we're right behind them.
Now, how far behind the Bronco are you, Eric?
I'd say we're less than a mile behind.
Okay.
What's going to happen is that street, Rockingham, is a very, very narrow street. It's going to be interesting to see how that's going to work when he tries to make that right turn onto Rockingham and go up towards his mansion. The mansion itself is about a mile or so up Rockingham on the right-hand side.
Yeah, that's right, Eric. And also, once again, if we can continue to speculate, it will be interesting to see if he is allowed to go into the mansion itself or whether he will be stopped short of it.
That's a good question.
Remember, there are people there in that mansion, and I don't think law enforcement wants any kind of siege to take place. Then again, it is possible he may have said on the phone, all I want to do is see my mother and children, and then I will surrender. So that is also a point for speculation, too.
It's hard to say what in the world is on his mind at this point.
That's right.
But he is getting very close to Rockingham. We're getting very close. He's going to be making that turn very soon. There he goes. Okay, he has made a turn.
Yeah, he's off Sunset now.
He did not make a turn on Rockingham. He turned on a street called, hang on, Bristol Circle, I think.
Yeah,
Bristol Circle North is where he turned off of Sunset.
Yeah, he'll make a left turn now to get over to his street, which is Rockingham.
This is the back way that you can get to his mansion.
That's right.
Okay, we're following not only black and whites with their sirens on and their lights flashing, but again, there's about 10 private citizens on motorcycles who have joined the pursuit as well.
And then we can
very close to the house now, very, very close. We're right in the neighborhood. We are right on the block where his house is.
Okay. And he is pulling in to the driveway.
Coming around.
Someone is going to the door right now, Eric.
Okay. We're pulling up. Let me tell you what I can see. We've just turned the corner. It's total chaos here. Motorcycles, black and whites, people running around, officers getting out of their cars with their batons, people running, they're keeping our cameras away. They won't let our cameras through.
Okay, I can understand that, but we do have an aerial view, Eric.
Okay, we're gonna show you a picture from the ground here as soon as we can, but the sheriffs are not letting us get up close enough to actually see what's going on with the naked eye. So you have the best viewpoint from the helicopter there. They're stopping us.
Is that something out of this pointed out of the window there, Hal, on the passenger side?
Well, it did. Or
is that just the mirror?
That might be the mirror.
But he's right in the courtyard of his estate.
Yeah, and he was evidently not driving, obviously.
No.
So he would be sitting right over there, possibly on that side.
But the gates were open. He went right through. Someone came up to him and then was chased away by whoever the driver was. And two uniformed officers or uniformed men came up and pulled him away, flashing lights on both sides, and we are right here at a standoff.
Now there's a big crowd here developing as well. All the people who were chasing him have now stopped here.
Well, we will stay right on that Ford Bronco, and we will be waiting, just as everyone who is watching with us is waiting, to see what happens.
There's a reflection of light on the windshield, so you really can't see into the driver's seat.
And we must recognize the fact also that we're dealing here with so many variables, so many imponderables, the state of mind of OJ himself, what he has said on the phone when talking to other people, perhaps law enforcement. It's very, very difficult to figure out just what the next move is going to be.
Craig, what do you see from up there in the your pilot's position?
Well, Stan, we've got the vehicle in the driveway. with flashers on. Someone approached the vehicle initially, and then believed security guards or police officers pulled him away from the vehicle. And right now, it's just it's a waiting game, it looks like.
Where are the law enforcement officers? Can you see them around? Are they all outside?
It looked like they came out of the house, or were in the house and came out of the house, and then went back into the house. At this point in time, I do not see too many law enforcement people in and around the vehicle. However, that's not to say they could be close proximity to the house and the vehicle around the grounds.
Craig, let me recommend that we stay right on your position there, because I have a feeling that the car didn't just drive in there to sit there, that something is happening right now. I would suspect there's some kind of communication, cellular communication between a cell phone and either the house or law enforcement in that area. Some kind of negotiation must be going on.
Yeah, I would assume that would be a good analysis of the situation. Here right now, it appears that to resolve this possible conflict here, that communication would take place, so everybody would know what was going on, so there would be no unexpected surprises to cause some problems.
Yeah, we don't want to just guess at what might happen, because we don't know any more than the viewers who are watching with us or than you do sitting up there. And I think the best thing we can do is just watch and wait and hope that this is resolved with a peaceful resolution.
Hal, we just got some information over our radio. The police helicopter is requesting us to gain an altitude because of the number of helicopters over the scene here is interfering with voice communications with the vehicle, and there appears to be negotiations going on from the vehicle with either obviously I would speculate a cellular phone, as you mentioned earlier.
Right. Okay, well, if you can gain altitude, we certainly want to cooperate in that respect, not endanger anybody. And as we say, we hope that this will end peaceably, but we'll see what happens here. We'll stay on that Ford and see what happens. But I do suspect that there are negotiations going on right now.
And the fact that the officers of the scene have kind of stayed the other side of the wall, yeah. There's no one rushing or standing around. It's just the white car sitting there in the courtyard.
Yeah, I think his motivation, he said, was to see his mother, who was at the estate, and perhaps the children. Now, the children may not be there. We don't know that. Maybe they're being brought there, and there may be some kind of negotiation that perhaps if he could see his mother and the children and make some statement perhaps or talk to them, that maybe then there would be a surrender to the police. Did you gain altitude? Are you up at a...
Yes, Hal, we sure did. We're about 2,100 feet above the scene. Okay. That's mean sea level, which puts us up about 1,500 feet above the ground.
You still have an excellent picture, and we can see everything going on at that point, Craig.
Yes, this excellent vantage point from this location. As you can see, as details develop here, we should be able to see quite clearly what will take place.
OJ Simpson wrote a letter to his children and to his mother and then to his friends. And his attorney...
Yeah, that letter was read this afternoon, and what it did was to proclaim his innocence. He claimed that he was innocent innocent of the charges of murder in the first degree, 2 counts of murder in the first degree, with special circumstances. I think it's just a matter now of waiting to see. Do you see any other law enforcement activity in the area, Craig, as you look down?
Yes, as you can see on the perimeter road here, there is quite a number of vehicles that were in the pursuit with the white Bronco. They have all positioned themselves around the house, and I suspect that there are quite a number of officers surrounded the house at this time.
There were evidently officers inside the house also.
Yes, that's what appeared as we came up. Someone approached the vehicle initially and was pulled away from the vehicle by what it looked like some sort of officers. I could not tell their uniforms.
You know, Craig, to put it in one kind of perspective, the belief earlier was, when the letter was read at his attorney's office, at Mr. Shapiro's office, the view was that he was a fugitive from justice. Well, he is not a fugitive in one respect anymore. We know where he is, and he is, you know, there was speculation he might be out of the country, he may be hiding someplace. That is not the case anymore. That situation has now changed. OJ Simpson is back at his home. And this is not a friend's home or any secondary home. This is his primary residence. Where he has been all day is difficult to speculate. He was out in the valley, then down in Orange County, and now he came back up the San Diego freeway and has come home again. I doubt that he will be leaving again. The police now know where he is. We have found him. The door is opening, and let's see what happens now. We'll watch with you. This is the driver's side of the vehicle.
Okay, someone just got out of the vehicle, approaching the front door, dressed in black, and entered. Looks like they entered the front of the house there. Possibly O.J. Simpson. At this point in time, from this vantage point, it was difficult to see or positively identify that individual.
In the brief view that we had, whoever that individual was, whether it was O.J. or not, the person did not appear to be carrying a weapon.
No, it didn't appear that at all, and in fact, they walked rather casually to the front door. So, yes. So it'll be interesting to see what develops here.
Yeah, the reason I mention that is because the reports were that O.J. did have a gun to his head as the car was driving up the 405 freeway. So there did not seem to be a weapon for that person who walked into the house.
Right, Hal. We're going to reposition here and possibly get around to the other side of the vehicle so we can possibly see inside that open door. We're going to come around here and see if we can't get a different vantage point to possibly get some additional information.
Now, the best we can determine, there is still one other person, at least one other person in that vehicle. Is that correct?
At this point, from the information that I've gathered up to this point, it appears that someone has just approached back to the vehicle and entered the vehicle. Let's see if we can't get around this tree here.
Maybe you can come back the other way so we can...
A civilian. Okay, that is the man that got out of the car. That presumably is Al Cowlings. From this aerial shot, it looked like that man is bulkier and stockier than O.J. Simpson is. But they are pretty much, they're both big men. Mm-hmm. But that is the man who got out the driver's side door. We presume that to be Al Cowlings, who was driving. We're not sure at this point in that 911 call whether it was Al Cowlings who said that O.J. Simpson had a gun to his head, or whether it was O.J. Simpson himself saying that he had a gun to his head. One can assume, I think, rather safely that Al Cowlings is having a conversation at this point with somebody inside that vehicle, that someone, presumably O.J. Simpson, perhaps this is the conversation between two longtime friends that will resolve this odyssey this afternoon and this evening without any more violence, without any more bloodshed.
This is just one of two different vehicles that authorities had been searching for today. They had also put out an all-points bulletin for Simpson. They were searching for this white Ford Bronco that belongs to Cowlings, and also Simpson's black Mercedes. There's been no sign of that whatsoever. So it appears if the two are in this vehicle...
Now, that, Al Cowlings, we believe that to be Al Cowlings, holding his hand up, his palm up, perhaps toward the police officers behind him, pointing toward the front door to O.J. Simpson's home, obviously having a conversation with someone inside at this point. Now, unfortunately, now Al Cowlings is the man we believe to be Al Cowlings, is obscured by that tree, but...
As you can see, obviously they're negotiating and talking
to police officers.
Two police officers that are in the house. Back to the vehicle, so it appears that someone else is definitely in the vehicle.
Yes.
And there's an intermediary there discussing things with the police.
They were gesturing toward something behind, in the back or toward the rear of the property there.
Okay, here's I believe a man is pleading to negotiate with people here, the police obviously, and it's obviously very stressful down there from these pictures, as you can see. A very delicate situation taking place as we watch here.
Now, we do know that there was at least one gun in that car.
It would be very interesting if anybody on the ground would possibly able to get some audio here of this gentleman.
He's quite upset at the moment.
Yes.
Quite emotional here, which would seem to dictate the stressfulness of the situation, and hopefully this type of situation would not escalate into something a little more dramatic.
And both of the officers
appear to be calming the individual down and reassuring him that things are safe.
Well, there's no doubt, as we mentioned before, that OJ is in a particularly agitated state of mind. That is, I think, is a truism. Consequently, what goes on from here on is very difficult to ascertain. I would suspect also that his lawyer is going to be involved in these negotiations also. But it does appear, and this once again is just guessing, that OJ is still in that vehicle and probably on the passenger side. That seems to be a fairly logical deduction, I think, because the person who got out is doing some kind of negotiation or talking rather than dealing with law enforcement and talking to somebody in the car.
Yeah, most definitely. That's what it appears to be.
Hal, yeah. Eric Spillman now is live on the grounds of the house. Let's switch to him right now. Eric?
Well, Stan and Hal, unfortunately, we can't see as well from our vantage point as you can from yours. We are about, I'd say 500 yards away from the driveway where the drama is all taking place. And as you can see, there's a line of black and whites, Highway Patrol, Orange County Sheriffs, and LAPD patrol cars with their lights flashing all the way back down towards Rockingham. And
Eric, let me just mention, it looks as though something is going to happen right now. The person in the car just moved toward the entrance of the doorway.
And Hal, Stu Nahan just called in and identified the gentleman standing there in the courtyard. It is Al Calling.
Yeah, it is a professional football player and his best friend.
Close friend, yes.
Played ball at SC with OJ, and he was the man driving the car, and he was also the man with OJ Simpson at the house in San Fernando Valley.
Right. Now, he's backed away from the vehicle, and LAPD inside the house.
Just inside the doorway.
I would think that what you're going to see is, well, once again, we're speculating, but I would suspect that OJ is in that vehicle and will probably come out of that vehicle. He didn't come all this way to sit in the car.
Now, everyone at the scene, I know everyone hoping for a peaceful solution to this entire scenario.
And Jan, he's standing right out in the open. There are two police officers just inside the door.
Right.
At least two. There may be lots more. Right?
Two that we've seen at this point, yes.
And then he had his hands moving in a very emotional manner, what they were saying.
Right, it was unclear who he